Hello, happy Earth Day. I hope you are enjoying this beautiful, warmer day. Today I wanted to talk about something that is related to Earth Day, the environment, but also how it affects housing and how there are multiple issues that kind of connect. And it's something that I have done some research on, and I'm not by any means an authority on this. I'm going to link some articles and resources below after I finish this live, but how environmental hazards, or forgive me if I stumble across my words, but basically I'm going to be talking about environmental racism and fair housing, and how those two things are very much connected, and how the environmental issues that we're facing disproportionately affect Black and Indigenous people of color, and also poorer or underserved communities. So I have some quotes that I'm going to be sharing, and just bringing up some different examples, and this is just to kind of get us thinking about different ways that the environment is connected to housing, is connected to a history of racist practices in our country, things like that. So here's a quote from a woman named Emily Dow. We constantly hear the narrative that climate change impacts us all, and while that's true, the issue is disproportionately impacting people of color, especially Black, Latino, and Native Americans. And when it comes to environmental justice, we just aren't talking about social equity enough. So some examples of that are Flint, Michigan. It's a big example of that. Paul Mohai called it the most egregious example of environmental injustice in recent U.S. history. So a lot of times, especially in America, but in the world in general, we're seeing that underserved communities are have more exposure to environmental hazards in air pollution, in drinking water, and in housing hazards. So here's some more research. An analysis in California from the Union of Concerned Scientists affirmed this idea. In the study, they found that in the U.S., Black, Latino, Asian, and low-income communities suffered the most from poor air quality, and it impacted Black Americans the most. They actually experienced 43% more exposure to PM 2.5 pollution than white Californians. And fine particulates from PM 2.5 pollution are smaller in width than human air and form from diesel exhaust, smokestacks, construction projects, etc. And exposure to that kind of pollution is actually the 6th leading cause of death in the world. I found that interesting. So air pollution is one of the ways that environmental hazards disproportionately affect non-white communities and poorer communities. Another aspect of environmental injustice deals with the animal agriculture industry, so dairy and meat farming, specifically large industrial aspects of this. So animal agriculture has statistically polluted and caused more health hazards for the poor and marginalized, whether that be with working environments, in meat processing plants, or in the areas surrounding those communities. There's a lot of health hazards involved and injustices with the working conditions in animal agriculture. David Rosner, co-author of the 2014 book Lead Wars, which traces the post-war history of lead poisoning, says that racism has always been part of why lead poisoning has been tolerated. So this is one that's more specifically dealing with fair housing, or houses in general, not just the environment, the communities where people live, but the actual houses in which people live, and the racist policies that have led to health hazards in housing, which is something that I'm learning about still. So this is saying that racism has always been a part of why lead poisoning has been tolerated. So we know, or maybe you're just learning, that lead-based paint was outlawed for use in 1978. But houses before that have a possibility of containing lead-based paint. So this is saying that lead poisoning is just one of the many health hazards that people face. It says that this is a quote by Kinzer Pointer. "You have to look around you," said Kinzer Pointer, pastor and health campaigner in an overwhelmingly African-American community in Buffalo, New York, a city where most of the housing is older than 1978, and 40% of children tested in 2016 had an elevated blood lead level. Buffalo is a prime example of the effects of redlining, the exclusion of minorities in the U.S. from everything to insurance to grocery stores, which offers a clue to how racism leads to poor health. Redlining in housing was a racist practice before fair housing came into effect, that excluded certain people from obtaining a mortgage in certain neighborhoods, which primarily affected people of color. And so that has traced its way into, in this study, older homes that have high levels of lead-based paint affecting primarily people of color. So again, I'm not an expert in environmental racism or how that affects fair housing, but it's just some research that I've done. And on this Earth Day, I wanted to sort of share other people's ideas on how environmental hazards can affect and be sort of connected to issues with housing, equity, inclusion, and diversity. So again, I'm going to link some of the articles that I've been reading down below, but if you have any questions or thoughts, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. And I think it's something that we should chat about, as I'm an advocate for environmental conservation and care for the environment, obviously, because I'm a human and I live in the environment of the world. So that's pretty much it. And of course, I'm an advocate for housing fairness and creating a more equitable world. So anyway, happy Earth Day. And again, leave your thoughts. Thank you. Bye.